Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever your time zone may be. My name is Don Bowman. My company is Agilicus, and we make a really great zero trust secure remote access for industrial control systems. And today we're going to talk about that and streamlining service and how to add remote operations as a way to make your job more efficient, whether you support them directly, you operate them, you manage them, etc. And so that's what our agenda is. We're going to talk about the operations drivers, like what's causing people to want to move to remote operations or extend their use. We're going to talk about the skill set gap, and this is kind of a big one where it's getting more and more unique skills to deploy any sort of industrial control system, whether it's civil engineering, wastewater, manufacturing. It used to be one person and a screwdriver, not exactly, but now you've got the HMI engineer and the one that's specialized in the process control, the PLC, etc. We're going to talk about the SaaSification of systems, how more and more of what was traditionally on-premise, very closed, is now hybrid, just like John Deere has done with the tractors. You're seeing the same thing where there's a license manager remote and the historians remote and there's big data. And that leads into big data, predictive analytics. Everybody thinks, better mean time to repair, quicker, faster, better, cheaper, more precise, and that's leading to the cloud and AI and technologies that really don't come out to the edge too well. We'll talk about the perspective of the operator. This is my plant, I run it. And we'll talk about the partner perspective. I support them, whether I'm a manufacturer, an integrator, or ongoing remote operations. And more importantly, one of my favorite themes is we're going to talk about how this can be non-zero sum. Zero sum means for you to win, I have to lose. That's poker. But non-zero sum is like building a house. The carpenter gets paid and the electrician gets paid and so on. And the value of the house is worth more than the sum of those parts. All parties win. I think there's an all parties win story for remote operations with zero trust today. So systems are getting more complicated. The number of PLCs, the amount of logic at each. One of the wastewater plants I was in the other day, 700 plus PLCs in it. Many years ago, those would have been just mechanical systems entirely. The number of sensors, the amount of stuff that's coming in, it's just a huge number. Systems are getting more interconnected. The license servers are off net, the database, the historian. It means there's a bigger blast radius. When something goes wrong, it could stretch further. Efficiency is more of a driver. Predictive analytics mean time to repair, inventory. People want to be able to use their data to drive their business more efficiently. And that's causing them to want to have a type of service that is managed remote operations. Somebody who's an expert who does multiple companies is going to look after this one thing for me. SaaSification, it's occurring in all industries. So, you saw years ago when the CD used to be, you would go to HMV and you'd browse through the stacks and you'd pick something. And now it's music as a service. Nobody owns it. John Deere has gone to war with the American farmer, and same idea. It's tractor as a service. You can't own it, you can't repair it. It's connected to the cloud, and if you don't like that, you can't buy it. And we're seeing that more and more and more in systems, and often they're not quite finished when they ship. You see that Tesla has famously done that, Google has famously done that, but here you got revision 1.0, it's really 0.5, and I'll finish it on your dime, which means a lot of consistent, continual updates. The side effect of this, more people, more connectivity, more risk, more cybersecurity. Big data. So the other big driver here is everybody wants to find the nuggets of gold that are hidden in their statistics. And it's moved from a sort of a monthly compliance report in wastewater, how much chlorine did you add, and et cetera, to millisecond value driver. If we can get that gate to close 1 minute earlier, it means this overflow won't occur, we won't have this this mess, etc. Predictive maintenance, one of my friends works for a company. They put a bunch of microphones in a room and basically feed them into a smartphone, and they can listen and they can tell you when a bearing is going to fail before it fails. So rather than looking at the manufacturer's data sheet and say the bearing is good for 3 years and replace it 3 years, which involves downtime, you just wait until an hour before it fails and you do it. Everybody's got that story that they're like, well, if we just stretch the equipment to its actual limit as opposed to the theoretical limit for the class of them, the sort of, if I have to go to the average versus 3 sigma versus 6 sigma, there's a big difference in capital deferral, there's a big difference in the amount of maintenance you do. And we think big data is the way to get there. Many remote operations are based around big data today. That's a big part of their story is I will manage this thing for you, and I do that by having access to the data to train my models. Big data requires outbound network connectivity. Most of you run industrial plants, wastewater plants, etc., that don't have outbound connectivity. They are air gapped, or they are intended to be air gapped, and with the exceptions, and the exceptions are where the risk comes in. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So it's a set of roles. Different people have different roles inside these operations. I operate, it's my risk, I own the infrastructure. I manage, I run part of all of it under contract. So that could be a singular vendor that does that type of operation, or it could be the integrator has grown into that role, people that design it, etc. There's different, one of the things is that these are asymmetric. The I operate demographic, you own all the downside of something bad happening. And the I manage demographic, you want things to be simple, and security is seen as a challenge to you. One little story is a couple years ago, I had an engagement with a potential partner located in Western Canada. And there they have this concept called run a river, where you can, if you're a small property owner with a river running through it, you could dam the river, put up a hydroelectric dam, and you could sell the power to the province. And a lot of ranchers and farmers, it's kind of a complex thing to do, so they outsourced it to this company, and this company ran a whole bunch of them. And we were pitching that our remote access to HMI with multi-factor via VNC was better than what they were currently doing. And so we did this call, and with screen sharing, they showed me how they currently did it. They brought up a spreadsheet. It had a password for every one of their customer site, which I could see in clear text, and a port. They did port forwarding for every VNC server, and he just clicked on one of them, boom, it was in the face. And I was like, that's craziness. Like, that is a crazy insecure thing to be putting into our hydroelectric grid. And I pitched my system, and I'm like, that we're so secure, and this and that, it's easy to log into. And at the end of it, he's like, you're the same cost as what I'm doing now, so I'm not going to switch. The reason was he didn't own any of the downside. If his customers blew up, that was their problem, their insurance problem, the grid's problem. His main issue was, look, I just want my team to be able to have simple access quickly from their tablet. At Agillicus, that's what we achieve. We make it so that anybody can pull over to the side of the road with single sign-on, sign into one of these things with a second factor, lower the risk for the operator, but the managing demographic is not taking any additional cost. And that's what I should have pitched this person. I should have pitched, your customer cares about the risk, you care about the simplicity, this is non-zero sum, you can both get that and win. But that's a real challenge here, is that these people have asymmetric needs and wants. And as a consequence, identity, connectivity, and policy become a battleground rather than a common ground. They start talking about things like, let's make a shared account. We'll make the Siemens account. 300,000 people work for Siemens. One of them was fired a minute ago for doing something bad. I'm confident if you've got a single shared account with a company like Siemens, like that, there's no security involved in that. You get these acrimonious discussions about backdoors. Oh, you're putting in an E1 with a cellular antenna, that's bad. As a versus pragmatism, just get this done. This is the challenge here. So the first one is the identity battleground. This does not need to be a battleground. This should be a common ground. Every one of us has a job. I'm assuming. I don't know all of you personally. Every one of us works for a company, and that company has an identity system, usually Microsoft or Google. We're a Google Workplace shop. I sign in with Google. You might be a Microsoft Azure shop. You sign in with Azure. People work for companies. Companies attest that you are who you say you are via authentication. So your identity is in their system, and then you authenticate to it. The most common authentication, username and password, and hopefully a multi-factor of some sort, but not required. It's common to try to force your contractors and so on to have a new identity. Let's just create a contractor at my company. No, we don't need to do that. That creates friction. It creates risk. They're going to write the password down. They support 30 companies like you. They're going to have 30 different accounts for their team to remember. They're going to share the password. It's a guarantee. Single sign-on becomes a shared ID is terrible. Really, what you want is every user to be able to sign in with the company they're at, but then be able to access the equipment they need. So if I'm supporting you, I should be able to sign in as Don at Agillicus, and then you should be able to say, Don at Agillicus is allowed to do this thing. There's 3 swim lanes here. There's what's called authentication, who are you? There's authorization, what are you allowed to do? And there's access, how do I get you there? There does not need to be a battle over this. So an example, a couple of years ago in Florida, the Oldsmar water system, they had TeamViewer, which was shared. A bunch of their users were using it to remotely manage some process thing from them to drive there at night. password was shared, somebody had it on another system, suddenly that plant is owned by somebody else. There's no reason to do this. There's no need. Those HMIs that were hacked in Aliquippa a couple months ago, no need for that. This is much simpler than people think. That's what Zero Trust is all about. If you have identity attested to by the company you work for, it doesn't have to be my company. It's just your company. I'm okay with that. If you get fired, I'm sure your company will take you out of your identity system. And that way, every user, I can sign in as Don Angelicus, you can sign in as you at your co, single sign-on, no new user, no new password. So much better for anti-phishing. The user has a very consistent sign-in experience. So Zero Trust is around who are you, singular identity for a person, what are you allowed to do? If the what is just you're allowed to access the plant, that's what's a VPN. We don't want that. We want individual things. You have read-only access to this HMI at this time. You can read tags on the PLC but not reprogram it. You can have backups from the historian, but you can't reboot it. You can't change the software on it. That's authorization. That's what you're allowed to do. And then how you get there. And this is the other part that's unique for us. So you think about your typical industrial plant, and it uses a concept called an air gap. And the air gap is this idea that somehow there's no internet traffic flows back and forth over it. And the analogy I use is kind of like the human body. My skin is my firewall, so that's what keeps bacteria from killing me in my sleep. But if I get scratched, I don't die. It's because I have white blood cells. That's what's called defense in depth. A lot of these industrial plants have a singular layer of security, the air gap, but it's already been pierced by a lot of stuff. There's a little modem in there with a little LTE antenna that nobody talks about, and it has access to this one thing, except it has access to everything. There's an E1 or one of those other things. There's a outbound connection. There's a proxy server. There's this, that, and the other thing. Zero Trust is about saying a single person, a single resource with a set of roles of authorization. If it's one-to-one, one person, one resource has permission, that's Zero Trust. If it's one person has everything, that's a VPN. So that shared custody and shared destiny that I talked about earlier, the operator tends to view the problem differently. They say vendor access management. I have many vendors. My challenge is how do I manage them and keep them safe? The vendor tends to view the problem the other way. Oh, geez, yet another customer with a snowflake request to install a slightly different VPN. I can only install one at a time on my laptop. What am I supposed to tell my service techs? They work for 30 companies. I'm going to give them 30 laptops. I'm going to have 30 virtual machines running. They want everything the same. The operator tends to want things the way they want them. And you end up with that little Venn diagram on the right of that shared custody is around that authentication and users. With our system, we make that all web-based. And I know some things can't be web-based, like Rockwell Studio is not, but we have a method to your user signs in via the web browser. There's no local software. That thing alone is tunneled through. You don't have any other local access. And you can just pull over the side of the road, open your tablet, use the HMI. Zero Trust, your identity, remote operations, getting your job done, managing more customers with less resources, more efficiency. It's how the world is working. So the challenges the operator would say is, look, I own the risk. Security is very important to me. I'd rather have things inefficient if they need to be more secure. My staff also needs remote access. So if you're a company that is seeking to provide remote operations, your customer might have the challenge that they can't remotely see things or operate them. They can't do alarm management with Twilio or whatever. We fix all that. And if you're partnering with us, then you can fix it for your customer, and that makes you sticky there. The operator's going to say, I got rules, they're either internal, they're industry, they're policies I got to comply to, my board of directors, my whatever. And I've made some choices here, and I own the audit. I cannot have a failure, and this is my neck on the line. But I often have a little control. The vendor says to me, look, here's this new widget. By the way, we have 24/7 access to it, or it's not in calibration. What are you going to say? You're a hospital, it's an MRI, it needs to be in calibration, or you're going to have a malpractice suit. But your network's also not set out for some random vendor to have an IP address inside your hospital to go scooting around inside this MRI. It's kind of a challenge. That's where Zero Trust comes in. It allows you to limit the blast radius. You know exactly who's accessing it. It's not just a random company. But when the vendor dictates this, the operators sometimes shrug. They don't know what to do. Well, it's a cabinet full of stuff, and I don't know what's wired in there. I see the outside of the cabinet. It's a vendor package of some sort. I don't know what's in there. I guess you got access to everything. Somewhere inside that is a Windows 98 machine running an HMI with VNC with no password, and there's a VPN, and everybody has access to everything, and there's a button marked "Start the fire." Probably literally. The more complex it gets, the more they just have to trust. Geez, I guess I'll just trust you. You know this better than I do. But their issue is that remote support is expensive hourly. On-site support is even more expensive. So they really want to get this problem solved of having people do it remote. The person that's managing them, that's kind of what my pitch is today, is partner with Agillicus, solve this problem as an operator, or partner with Agillicus and go solve this problem for your customers as a manager. You provide remote operations. Every customer is a different VPN or system. You can't install them all on a single laptop. You don't have the licenses. You can't share them across your team. Your stupid customers investigating multi-factor. You're confident this is going to suck. You're trying to convince them just to do it on SMS. You can put a reflector and send it to everyone on your team and just break the security. Like, this is what's going through your head. You don't want their multi-factor. You want your own. It just breaks your stuff. It just, etc. You want convenience, and you think driving is an inefficient use of time. You don't want one staff member not chewing up billable hours in a truck. You want them, managing customer A, then customer B, then customer C. So here's my proposal. If you're a design, build, and support type company, I think you should be looking at adding, if you don't already have it, a package service on remote operations. The nice thing about this, if you're a system integrator, you'd kind of charge for stuff on cost plus today. It cost me $90,000 to do it. I build it at 15% profit margin. I do 1 year warranty. Okay, I'm going to sell it for 130. But when you're providing remote operations, you can do it on value. This is what it's worth to my customer. I'm going to manage all of your alarms for you. You don't have to worry about that. I'm going to manage the process control. I'm going to manage, the chemical mix. I'm going to make sure that those machines get maintained. Partner with Agillicus, and we will solve all of the issues with shared passwords and new accounts and all that by making it single sign-on for all parties. We'll make access and security secure, acceptable, and simpler for both the operator and the manager. The non-zero sum equation. It's more secure for them. It's easier for you. And then you can provide that access service on behalf onwards to your customers. Everybody wins. I win because you pay by my product. The operator wins because they have better service. They got better mean time to repair. They got lower cost, and they have lower risk, which means lower insurance premiums. And the manager wins because they can manage more customers with the same number of heads, and they can therefore make more money, and they're charging on value instead of on time and materials. So that's kind of the pitch. I wasn't going to do a demo today, but I would love to do a demo individually if anybody wants to reach out. Or you're welcome to go to our website. Drew's pasted a case study there, but there's some links. But the value that comes there, zero trust, this is a best practice for security in wastewater, in manufacturing, in any industrial control system, you name it, where you have a bunch of things running Modbus and CIP and Ethernet IP and whatever that just don't have any security. And suddenly you're talking about this thing is going to be on the public internet and have access to the cloud, and this thing beside it is running some wretched ancient real-time operating system that if you sneeze it crashes, and they're on the same layer 2 switch. Zero trust is what you need to make that happen, both inbound and outbound. To give outbound access, it's the same idea. The who becomes a system instead of a person, and therefore you're sure that thing isn't opening up a command and control channel back to China to do something nasty. Zero trust is easy to deploy. This is a proxy-based solution. There's no reconfiguration of all the equipment. It's just sort of click and go and you're in there. Increased operational efficiency, more things per hour done per person, more vendors getting their job done in a hurry, whether it's a system that needs to be monitored to be maintained or it's something else, and a seamless user experience. It's really a lot simpler for the end user. You're not having to retrain them. Everything works differently. It's just the device you have, where you have it, the network you have it, with your credentials, you can sign in and then they can do what they're allowed to and nothing more. So with that, I will take some questions, if any, post in the chat. I would love to engage with you after this webinar. My team will reach out to you. You can also just feel free to email me, don@agillicus.com. The good, the bad, the ugly. Don, you were wrong. Don, you didn't talk about this thing, which I hoped you would. Don, that was the most insightful thing ever. Thanks, Mom. Oh, wait, that's not my mom. We'd love to interact with you. I think Agillicus would be a great partner for your business. Together, we can make the small, the medium, and the large more secure for a very economical cost, both in human capital, time, and in dollar capital, CapEx. Seeing no questions, Thank you very much for your time today. Again, my name was Don Bowman. My company was Agilicus. We make zero trust secure remote access for industrial control systems focused on the wastewater more than any other demographic. Cheers and bye-bye.